Have you ever wondered about the end of the world? I mean, really wondered what a roadmap for it might look like? Well, today we're diving into one of the most famous and maybe infamous timelines ever written, all laid out in the book of Revelation. Whether you see it as literal prophecy or powerful symbolism, it's an incredible story. So let's trace this map together and see where it leads.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get our bearings and understand the source we're looking at. Then, things get wild with a sudden global disappearance. That event kicks off 7 years of absolute chaos on Earth. But right after that, the script completely flips to a 1,000-year reign of peace, all building towards one final ultimate judgment.
Okay, let's jump right in. Before we get to all the crazy events on the timeline, we have to understand the book they come from. What exactly is the book of Revelation?
So the source material makes it clear this isn't your average history book. It's a prophetic vision, you know? It's packed with intense, symbolic language that lays out a sequence of events for how our current world ends and how a totally new, eternal one begins. Think of it less like a daily schedule and more like a cosmic roadmap.
And you gotta understand, this timeline doesn't ease you in. Nope, it kicks off with a bang. One single instantaneous event that changes everything and basically pushes over the first domino that makes all the others fall.
So what is that first domino? Well, that brings us to this massive event, this global disappearance. Within this theological framework, it's called the pre-tribulation rapture.
Okay, let's break that down. What is the rapture? Well, the source tells us 3 key things. First, it's the moment when all Christian believers are physically, instantly taken off the earth. Now, the why is super important. It's to pull them out of harm's way before a period of divine judgment hits the planet. And the consequence? Well, with the believers gone, what the text calls the Holy Spirit's restraining influence on evil is also gone. That leaves a massive global power vacuum.
And nature abhors a vacuum, right? Well, so does power. That void is filled almost immediately, clearing the way for a charismatic, powerful world leader to step onto the stage and take over. The source gives this figure a very specific name, the Antichrist.
All right, so with believers gone and a new global leader in charge, things on Earth are about to get, well, really intense. The world plunges into a period called the Tribulation, a time that's defined by the Antichrist's rule and a whole series of divine judgments.
In this period of turmoil isn't some indefinite age of chaos. No, the source is incredibly specific about the duration. It lasts for exactly 7 years.
So let's look at how these 7 years play out. The Antichrist quickly builds a global system demanding total allegiance. As a response, God's judgment is poured out in 3 escalating waves. First come the 7 seals, then the 7 trumpets, and it all culminates in the 7 bowls of wrath, which bring just incredible devastation. But the source says there's a purpose here. It's not just about punishment, it's also seen as a final, desperate call for people to turn to God before it's truly too late. And this whole 7-year period barrels towards one final epic confrontation, the Battle of Armageddon.
And that battle? It's not a long, drawn-out war. It has a very quick, very decisive ending. The source material states that Jesus physically returns to Earth in what's called the Second Coming. He defeats the Antichrist and his armies right then and there, slamming the door shut on the 7-year tribulation.
Okay, so take a deep breath, because after all that fire and fury, the entire mood of the timeline does a complete 180. The conflict is over, and the world enters a brand new phase, one defined by peace.
And we're not talking about a few decades of rebuilding here. This new era, which is called the millennium, is set to last for a full 1,000 years.
And this slide says it all, right? Talk about a role reversal. For this whole millennium, Satan is bound, locked away in a bottomless pit. Meanwhile, Christ is reigning on earth, ruling alongside the very same believers who were raptured at the beginning of the timeline. It's a complete flip of the script.
Now, you'd think 1,000 years of peace would be the perfect ending to the story, but we're not quite there yet. The source tells us that at the end of this long reign, there is one last test for humanity.
Yeah, you heard that right. This final test is called Satan's little season, and it happens in a flash. You can see the steps here. He's released from his prison for just a short time. Incredibly, he manages to deceive the nations one last time, leading them in a final pointless rebellion. But this time there's no 7-year war. He is immediately and utterly defeated. And then he's judged and thrown into the lake of fire, for good. This time, it's forever.
So, with that final rebellion crushed, we have finally reached the end of the line. This is the ultimate conclusion of the entire timeline, and it's not just an end, it's a completely new start.
With evil finally and permanently dealt with, the old world is wrapped up with two final massive events. First is the Great White Throne Judgment, where every non-believer from all of human history faces a final judgment. Then, after that, the source says the current heaven and earth, everything we know, are completely unmade. They just pass away.
But out of that ending comes a new beginning. The slate is wiped totally clean, and a perfect new heaven and a new earth are created in their place.
And this is the end game. This is the final scene. Into this brand new creation, a holy city, the New Jerusalem, comes down from heaven. And the story ends with God Himself living right there, directly with His people, in a perfect world, forever.
So that's the roadmap, from a sudden disappearance to an eternal paradise. It's an absolutely epic timeline, and it leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. If you really believe this is the pre-written future, how does that change the way you live your life right now? Something to think about. Thanks for exploring this with us.